Hi everybody, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL. Today I want to have a talk with you that's not complicated, but it's probably one of the most difficult things that we all have to face as human beings in general, okay? And this talk has as much to do with your personal psychological self, in fact more so than it does about your art career. Yet, when it comes to your personal life and your professional life as an artist, this has probably one of the most profound impacts on your ability to be motivated, on your ability to stay focused. Now, as you may or may not know, if you follow my channel, you know, of course, that I have an online mentorship, LUCIDPIXUL, and it's a private mentorship, which means that I get a chance to know my students. I get a chance to know my students quite personally, as they get to know me quite personally as well, right? In most cases, we get to know each other quite well. And one of the first things you learn about people, especially somebody in my position who teaches students from all over the planet, literally all over the planet, is that we're all identical. And how my students communicate their feelings to me, how I communicate them back, how we communicate each other's frustrations and obstacles and stuff like that is completely mutual. There's no cultural divide when it comes to being human and dealing with life on a day-to-day basis. We all deal with the same shit, okay? However, how we interpret, our perspective on how we interpret those big, life-changing, difficult times that we have in our life, which, by the way, we all have. You might be dealing with physical or psychological or sexual or personal or spiritual or professional problems, difficulties that are very, very heavy stuff. You know, they're very difficult to deal with. And I'm not talking about the day-to-day stuff, the day-to-day stresses that we deal with, like getting a flat tire or, you know, getting into a fight with our girlfriend or boyfriend. I'm talking about the kind of things that do have a permanent impact on our life, and more often than not last a very long time, if not forever. We deal with very often extremely difficult things that are far beyond what we believe our body is capable of handling, things that push us to the limits of exhaustion and sometimes depression and anxiety and frustration and anger, things that we feel deep in our core we cannot handle at all. But yet we do. For some strange reason, we end up getting out the other end of it alive. But we can spend years, waste years of our life looking in the wrong place and regarding it the wrong way. And instead of dealing with it in a healthy way, what we end up doing is conflicting with it. We push it aside. We take our own human strength and our capacity to survive for granted, and we put it aside. We distract ourselves. And things that go on for such a long time that they just become part of the fabric of your life. You just kind of accept them as being there. They are what they are, and what are you going to do about it? As such, we learn to accept the fact that we have less focus and less energy and less drive and less ambition and less motivation than our peers. And we blame ourselves for being genetically inferior to everybody else, when in fact that has nothing to do with it. On a biological level, I'm a very strong believer in the fact that if you find the right direction, if you have the right mind focus, you can accomplish absolutely anything on earth. It's like Steve Jobs said, everything, all of these greatest accomplishments on earth were all created by people no smarter or more capable than yourself, right? It's all a question of where your headspace is and where you're investing your energy. If I look back at the 20, 30-year-old Adam, what I used to interpret these difficulties in life was no matter how difficult an obstacle you overcome, life, and I'm putting this in quotes, life always has a way of one-upping you. No matter how difficult, when you feel like you've gotten over the most difficult thing in the world you could possibly get over, and you finally do get over it, and you think, you know, I've seen it all now, the one that follows, the difficulty that follows, that will inevitably follow, because it will, and I'll explain to you why, okay? The next difficulty that you face will most likely be more difficult and more challenging than the one you've already faced. But 40-year-old Adam has a very different perspective on this. And that perspective shift is the fact that life, quote unquote, is an excuse. It's a word to define something, but it's not actually accurate, and that can actually throw you in the wrong direction and encourage you to focus your energy in the wrong place. And the reason for this is because as long as we keep looking, as long as we keep labeling whatever happens in our lives as being some outside force that has control over us, that we are victims to, a solution is never found. And as long as a solution is never found, it'll continue to consume little bits of resource that you should be investing in other things. And that can accumulate over the years until the point where if this is your entire reserve of energy that you've only got this much left for yourself at the end of the day. Because all of this is being consumed by all of these other things that you've put aside and distracted from. Now, why do we do this? If you want to solve this problem, you have to get to the core of where this problem stems. What we label it as is being a physical, tangible thing that exists outside of ourselves. The reality of why we are in this situation, why this situation exists in our life, is actually biological. There's a quote that has always resounded with me and something that I keep coming back to over and over and over again. Why don't human beings change? Why don't they change? Why is there war? Why is there this? Why is there that? And John Cleese turns to him and says, because it's not until we're on the brink that true change ever happens. That's human nature. We always have to be on the brink to make a change. If I think about any of the most life-altering changes that I've made, the most difficult decisions that I ever made, it was because fear, consequence, or something I just could not accept finally pushed me over the edge to make that decision. But I could drag on the struggle for years and years and years until eventually something happens. Even though we're suffering, even though we're struggling, even though we feel like our soul is slowly being chipped away, deep down in our core, we know we can still handle it. Now, what happens if that brink never quite comes? Well, that's where human nature kicks in. Because there's two sides to the human brain that I strongly believe. There's the animal side, there's the human biological side of ourselves, and then there's our logical self. And they're always in conflict with each other. The biological self is saying, I need this to be happy and healthy. And the logical side is saying, yeah, but that really sucks. It's going to be really difficult, and I don't know if I'm in the mood for it today. Your logical brain is something that, in my personal opinion, in many cases, is one of the worst things in the world. You know that expression, trust your gut? Well, I believe in that, because no matter what your brain is telling you, your gut always has a way of telling you the truth. But if that brink doesn't actually happen, what do we do? What does our animal brain do? It throws us into the brink. It puts us into a situation. It forces us down a road where we end up looking back, where we realize we've actually thrown ourselves into the situation. And this happens more often than anything else in today's society because we're so protected, we're so nurtured, we're so mommied and daddied in today's society that we very often have a tendency to say, fuck it, I don't need to get a job because I can just go on social insurance. Not hitting on anybody with social insurance that needs it, of course, right? What do we do when we're on social insurance? The first thing we do is we say, I'm going to give myself a couple of weeks break and just relax, and then I'm going to get my portfolio together and start applying. 3 months later, still haven't really looked for work. Why? Because that social insurance is kind of mommy and daddying us a little bit. But what if, as soon as that period starts to come towards an end, and you're like, I've only got a month left, and I still haven't found a job, you start to hit that brink, and all of a sudden you run for the door. When life doesn't throw us on the brink, our human instinct will put us on the brink. It'll push us to that limit. Until eventually, we look back, we look at our lives and we go, holy shit, look where I am now. And you force yourself into change. What you need to come to terms with is that whatever difficulty you're dealing with in your life, whatever's pushing you and hurting you and cornering you and exhausting you and frustrating you and making you angry and making you depressed, whatever horrible, difficult thing you might be dealing with in your life or have been dealing with for an extremely long time, is not a bad thing. It is the very thing that's pushing you to the brink. To give that up is the opposite of what you should be doing. You should be looking at it and saying, I've been given an opportunity to grow. I've been given a concrete, tangible reason to push myself in a certain direction and embrace that difficulty and realize that it needs to be there. It's not a curse, it's a blessing. And all of the most difficult thing, when I look back at my life, the things that I've had to deal with in my life that were the most difficult, I look back at it now with love and admiration and respect. And I'm extremely grateful that I had the opportunity to be forced into that position, Because honest to God, all of the best qualities that I have today as a father, as an artist, as a person, are all because of the most difficult things I've ever had to face. They gave me physical, tangible reasons to be a better human being, to push in the right direction. Embrace that. Realize that that is the very thing you need in your life to become what it is that you want to get. But the awesome thing about it is, if you have spent the last 50, 60 years struggling with something, the longer you've struggled, the more you've learned. And therein lies the second phase of growth. It's not enough for us to just grow. It's not enough for us to just say, oh, well, I finally got over my obstacles and die. The whole point of growth is to learn from it so you can pass that on to somebody else. And you might have been dealing with physical or medical or emotional traumas your entire life and difficulties your entire life. And once you finally find that solution, you're going to have so many years of accumulated of experience and knowledge that when you do share that with other people, it's going to have incredible value. There's a reason why it took you this long. There's a reason why you struggled this long, and that's the reason. Or maybe you're somebody who's really young. Maybe you're somebody who's in your teens, and you're looking ahead at your life, and you're looking at these people, and you're thinking, my God, they've got 30, 40, 50 years of experience under their belt. I am nothing. I am completely insignificant. I'm going to be spending the next 30, 40 years of my life before anybody even recognizes me. There you are. There's your struggle. There's your reality. And that's the reality that you can teach and share with other people. There is the big lesson that you can pass on to your fellow person. Why the hell do you think I love teaching so much? It's because my career has been pretty fucked up for a very long time. LUCIDPIXUL exists because my life was very difficult professionally for a very long time. And that's what gave me the power to help. Same reason people who are firefighters probably dedicate their lives and their passion to firefighting before their compassion for people. And where does that compassion for people come from? Probably the fact that they might have lost somebody very dear to themselves when they were very young. Or maybe a woman who works at a women's shelter for abused women became a woman working at an abused shelter because she grew up being an abused woman. When you overcome a very powerful obstacle in your life, you develop the tools to help other people. And therein lies the core of who we are as human beings on a biological level. So like I said, and I'm going to say it one last time, if you're struggling, if you're dealing with something difficult that you've dealt with for your entire life, embrace it. Because that is what you need to become the awesome human being you are and will be. And you will never get better, you will never improve and grow as a human being unless you are pushed to the brink, whether you like it or not. When you finally do embrace it, when you do finally acknowledge it, when you do finally tackle it, realize that it needs to be there and that it's a blessing, then all of a sudden, all of that energy that you wasted trying to pass the buck off to somebody else for the fact that that happened to you, diminishes, and it leaves space for all of that motivation and drive and practice and learning, because your brain will be freed up to do it. All right? So I know this is a hell of a long and a hell of a heavy talk we've had today, but I consider it all extremely important stuff, and it kind of tackles one of the many questions I get from students and from people on my YouTube channel. All right, everybody, so hopefully you enjoyed my talk. Remember, I have my private online mentorship, my art mentorship. If you're interested in signing up for that, I do have a couple of spots opening it very soon. Actually, I have 2 spots that just opened up unexpectedly, so you can jump on that and reserve a spot for yourself. Also remember that there's the Brush Sauce Theater Art Contest with myself and the wonderful Tyler Edlin, the wonderful artist Tyler Edlin, and where you can submit your work and get professional critique and lots of exposure, and it's free. We don't charge you to submit your artwork. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. So hopefully you enjoyed the talk, everybody, and happy painting and happy living. Take care.